In the huge, vast world of fiber and textile arts, there are so many textures and qualities and colors to explore and ignite our creativity. And I am no stranger to exploring a little bit of color and texture in my knits. So take it from me, sometimes with our deeply saturated, gorgeous, stunning, immaculate yarns that we're so excited to work with, there's a little bit of extra prep that needs to go into place before we cast on our project. So today I'm going to show you how to pre-rinse your yarn before you cast on your project, and we will be using Lou Blue as our example today. Lou Blue is a collaboration between Finch Mod and myself, and it was a fundraiser for the organization Freedom for Immigrants. So I want to make sure that you all are getting the best experience from the very start. When your yarn is deeply saturated, all right, think your bold red moments or your bright purples or your electric blue, whether they're industrial dyed or hand dyed, they require a lot of dye in order to create these bold, vivid colors. Now, what this means is that even though the yarn looks finished, okay, there might be some extra dye that hasn't fully bonded to the fibers or might be hiding and holding on to some of the inserts that are in your yarn. So when you wash or work with it, there could be some color transfer in your water or on your hands or on your countertop or on your needles or wherever have you, okay? And some yarn brands do include disclaimers or care instructions for their more vibrant yarns. You'll see things like soak before use or wash separately at first, and other brands do not. I know you hate to see it coming. You're gonna wanna knit a swatch to test to see if the color transfers. So you're gonna wanna knit up a swatch and you're gonna want to block the swatch, and you will be able to tell easily if there is a little bit of color running off in the water. That is a good sign that you might need to pre-rinse all of your yarn to prevent further transferring of the color when the project is finished. And trust me, I too have that cast on energy when the bright yarn arrives. I feel that passion, that creativity, that force, and I just need to cast on. But it is so much better to be proactive than reactive, and doing a pre-rinse before casting on your project or finishing your project and then realizing that the dye is going to bleed, especially when you're doing color work projects with a lighter color yarn. It is so much better to do it now than to suffer the heartache of when the color bleeds later. To pre-rinse your yarn, it's fairly straightforward, fairly simple, although it does take a little bit of patience, all right? You're gonna want a clean basin, you're gonna want some cool water, and your yarn, of course. You're gonna want a towel, you're gonna want a spot to hang the yarn to dry, and optionally, you might want a little wool wash or wool detergent while the yarn is soaking in the water. So start with a clean basin or bowl. I like to use this Tupperware container, and fill it up with some room temperature water. No need to heat it, no need to chill it. And if you like, you can go ahead and add in some gentle wool wash. I use soak just because that's what I bought. But if you have a wool detergent that you love, you can just do a single drop in there. Next, you're going to remove the yarn label and untwist your skein. And when you untwist your skein, you're gonna notice it is a giant loop. You're gonna wanna be careful to keep it in this loop structure. Typically, with skeins, you are going to have ties around the yarn. For Lou Blue specifically, there are 2 ties, and I am going to add in a third with some scrap yarn just to keep it nice and untangled. Once your skein is unraveled and you have this nice loop that is secured by extra ties, you're going to want to gently lower your yarn into your water. There's no need to agitate or stir your yarn, just let the fibers relax and soak up the water naturally. And you're gonna wanna let it soak for about 5 to 10 minutes. As this soaks in water, I think this is a grand opportunity to talk about something that makes so many knitters, crocheters, and makers of all kind nervous, and that is felting. So felting happens when 3 things come together. That's moisture, heat, and agitation. Wool and other animal fibers have tiny scales that run along their surface. So when you add heat and moisture, those scales open up And when you add friction, those scales lock together and create a dense, matted fabric. That texture is what we call felt. Now, felt is beautiful when it's intentional, and there's so many cool uses of felted fabrics, but when it happens on accident, it is absolutely heartbreaking because that dense, matte texture also condenses your fabric. So that beautiful drapey wool sweater that you have, if you threw it to tumble dry, it probably came out shrunken and dense and scratchy. Now, there's nothing to worry about here, okay, because we are just gently pre-rinsing our yarn. And when we know how felting happens, we know how to not cause felting. So in this case, we are adding moisture, yes, with our wool fibers, but we are not adding the heat and agitation. When the 5 or 10 minutes have passed, you are going to want to lift the yarn out of the water and let gravity do its thing to let the water drip out. Now you can also squeeze your yarn to get out any of the excess water, but please do not twist or wring your yarn. No wringing here. We don't want to add any unnecessary agitation to these moist fibers, okay? We just talked about felting and we are not gonna do any felting here. If you wanna get some additional moisture out of your yarn, you can go ahead and lightly press it by wrapping it in a dry towel. Now comes the part that requires the most patience, and it is time to dry. You're gonna wanna head to a place that is cool and dry. We don't want any direct sunlight. Think like a dark bathroom or a closet, and you're gonna wanna let your yarn hang to dry. You can do this with a clothes hanger or on the back of a chair, or in my case, I am using the dark bathroom and a shower curtain rod to drape my yarn over the top and let it dry. And you're gonna wanna let your yarn air dry completely before using it. And in some cases, this might just be overnight. It could be a full day, but if it's really humid where you're at, it could be up to 48 hours. You'll know when it's ready when it feels light and dry to the touch and not cool or heavy with moisture. Patience is really key here, okay? You don't want to rush the process by adding any unnecessary extra heat, like with a hairdryer or a space heater. Air circulation is fine if you add a fan to the room, but any extra heat, we don't need it here. Just let the process take its natural course. I know it takes forever, but it is necessary. After several days, once it is dry, you will notice that it is still bold and beautiful and just as vibrant as when we first started. It just doesn't have any of that extra dye lying on the surface that will bleed out onto our project. Stella, this is Stella. Are you helping us with our yarn today? Thank you, Stella. Thank you. Here we go. Once your yarn is completely dry, now comes the fun part, which is deciding what to do with it. Now, if you're like me, you already have a plan for what you're gonna do with it, okay? So in that case, you're gonna go ahead and wind up your hank into a cake or a ball of yarn with a swift and a ball winder, or maybe your knees and hands. But if you're saving it for later, you can go ahead and twist it with your hands into a hank, just like this. I'm just twisting it extra tight. And then I'm gonna let it twist onto itself just like this. You can kind of get the loops together. Sure. It is tidy and breathable and ready for when you are ready to cast on with it. Pre-rinsing your bold, vivid yarns might feel like a tedious extra step that is getting in between you and the project you wanna craft, but actually it's an act of care and love for your materials and will protect your project and keep those bold colors exactly where they should be, which is not on your hands and not all over the place and not bleeding onto other parts of your project. Like I had mentioned at the beginning of the video, we were working with some Lou Blue today, which is a limited edition special collaboration between myself and Finch Mod, who is a hand dyer of yarns in Austin, Texas. You can check out more of her work by visiting finchmod.com. This yarn was a fundraiser for the organization Freedom for Immigrants, which is an immigrant-led abolitionist organization fighting for the freedom and dignity of immigrants in the United States. In less than 24 hours, we were able to raise over $2,000 to support their work and sold out of every skein of Lou Blue. I am so grateful for everyone who joined in, bought some yarn, and hung out with us as we raised money for this organization. You all proved that textile and fiber arts are something powerful and cannot be ignored. So thank you again. We will be casting on for the Lou Blue Knit Along on November 20th, and I cannot wait to see what projects you will be knitting up. I haven't even decided what I will be knitting with my Lou Blue, but I am so excited to be casting on with all of you on November 20th. Thanks so much for watching this video. Thanks so much for taking care of your yarn, and happy knitting. May your colors stay vibrant and your craft always remind you why you started making in the first place.